It's also a reminder of the fact that trade wars maybe are not that easy to win, and China's got a lot of ammunition up its sleeve, even though it doesn't import nearly as much from the U.S. as the U.S. imports from China. There's plenty of optionality to the Chinese strategy.
The question is, what else do they have at their disposal? You've been making the point for a while that China has the leverage here. Is that really true with Chinese markets slumping?
I really do. I mean, the fact that we import $500 billion of low-cost, increasingly high-quality goods is a huge windfall for income-constrained American consumers. We need low-priced Chinese imports to make ends meet. We also need China.
But they need those exports for economic growth.
It's a codependent relationship. We both need each other, and the idea that there's an imbalance in needs, I think, misses the two-way flow that goes on between our two countries. They also, by the way, are the largest foreign owner of U.S. Treasuries. The last time I checked, our budget deficit's going up. We're going to need foreign buyers to help us do the financing that the Trump administration needs to do.
But nobody thinks they're going to use that card, because that would just hurt them and all their investment.
Don't be so sure. Never say never, you know. It's not that they're going to sell treasuries, but maybe they'll be a little bit less reluctant to buy them at the next auction. Maybe they'll buy a little bit less, and the market will suffer the consequences as a result.
On these talks yesterday with Juncker in D.C., there's a couple schools of thought being put out today. One is that nobody likes being isolated. China will feel isolated, and that gives them incentive to come to the table. Goldman says it's going to embolden the White House to use tariffs. They say, we don't believe that recent positive developments should be interpreted as a reduction in risk. In fact, they likely mean the opposite. You've got a view on that.
Yeah, I'm programmed never to agree with Goldman because of where I worked before. But I do agree with them on that point. I think the Trump administration is clearly focused on isolating China, putting more pressure on China. The president's threatened, who knows what the latest threat is, another $200 billion, another $500 billion. He wants to do them all. It's not clear, what the outcome is. But, this is certainly an area where there's likely to be, between now and the midterms, more pressure than less pressure on China, with risk to them and risk to us, too.
You a fan of the medicine to offset the side effects of all this, namely the farm aid that the president, I assume, will talk about today in his trip to the Midwest?
I assume he will too, but I've learned never to assume with him. I think the idea of creating a retaliatory action aimed at our farmers and then utilizing, federal expenditures to further enlarge the budget deficit is not a great strategy given where we're headed on the deficit front. So it's like, you go with one arm and then you tie that arm behind your back and you use your foot to kick the ball down the field. That's not the best way to make progress on this front.
But what is the best way, Stephen? Because there's no shortage of people who say it's time that we needed to stand up to China. We've watched 20 years of them exporting our standard of living to theirs, and they do cheat and they do steal, and somebody has to do something.
Well, David, I have a huge amount of respect for you and your colleagues here, but you guys sort of always assert the fact that they do steal and there is forced technology transfer. One of these days, it's hard to get it in the sort of soundbite world we live in. You guys should really go into that. You should ask people like the CEO of Qualcomm about the concept of forced technology transfer or cyber theft. I think you'll be absolutely
cyber, Stephen,
shocked.
I did spend a lot of time. This is years ago, and things may have changed. It's 6 years ago.
Okay,
but I spent months
David,
and months on that.
That's the point.
They were absolutely stealing everything. Every board. I mean, boards then were not as nearly aware of the Chinese being behind their firewall as they are now.
David,
that was going on all the time.
You just said it, though. 6 years ago. You got to bring yourself up to speed.
But there was
a Sunnyland Summit in 2015 where Obama presented the evidence of this to Xi Jinping. There was an accord signed. Cyber activity between allegations of theft between China and the U.S. have eased off significantly since then. They haven't gone away, and to the extent it still exists, that remains a problem. But I think that is much less serious than when you did, what I'm certain was, great investigative reporting 6 years ago.
But you don't have a problem with the fact that it was essentially a seed round in their ability to grow? I mean, it provided a platform for them to start to do things on their own?
Carl, China's got, a history from inventing compasses, gunpowder, very advanced, sophisticated engineering, inventing paper, and now those were thousands of years ago. But this is an innovative culture. They know how to create new technologies and new things, and now they're doing it with artificial intelligence and biopharma and DNA sequencing. And we don't get the fact that they're capable of doing indigenous innovation as they need to do at this phase in their development. So, are we going to tell countries they can't do indigenous innovation to grow and avoid things like economists call the middle income trap? China's trying to do what generations of economists have told them to do. If they break the law, they should be held accountable, but we need to look into that rather than just assume that's the case.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.